What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Electric People. It's Ty Williams. Today, I was joined by Dave Madsen to interview Jon Sanders. Jon Sanders is pushing almost 1,800 career solar installs, been in the game for like 30 years, and consistently every single quarter wins some of our biggest experiences and competitions and performs at the very top of the industry and has been there for literally almost 30 years. He started knocking in 1996. So fun fact, he was actually the first podcast episode that we ever did. Not on this show, but on a different one, kind of started this whole thing. And just has a very interesting outlook. Jon keeps it super simple, loves the game, is a student of sales. But it was really fun to have Dave here, who's installed, I think Dave's number's over 1,700 now too. And just hear these guys go back and forth on how they think about sales, their love for the game, their passion for it, and kind of what they see in an evolving market and sales culture. So one of my favorite things from this episode is the way that Jon thinks. He's kind of unconsciously competent, doesn't realize he's doing it, but he has this way of flipping everything. Jon sees the world in reasons why he can do something versus reasons why he can't. I think you'll see that as you go through this episode. So enjoy our beloved, our revered Jon Sanders. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People.
Most of the stuff that comes out of my mouth is probably going to be a lie. Or a not a lie, but a super over-exaggeration.
Okay, let's start now then. Hey.
Oh, they were...
So, listen, our friends that are listening might not know this. This is Electric People Podcast. There was a podcast before Electric People Podcast. Episode 1 of Electric People is Tony Hawk. Episode 1 of Eagerly Unsatisfied is Jon Sanders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he done before me?
No,
Tony
way
Hawk?
after.
Oh, he's done after.
Yeah, so
okay.
we... here's how, like, the...
True story. Like,
it.
some people, when I had hair, thought I looked like Tony... What's his name? Tony Hawk?
Oh,
I'd be in Vegas. Oh, no joke. People would ask for my autograph thinking I'm Tony Hawk. I don't see it. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. I've never
Tony's
seen
kinda
you with...
tall, right?
I've never seen you with hair. Yeah.
And I told somebody I'm not Tony Hawk, and he did not believe me. And my wife will,
and that's a
will
Tony
vouch
Hawk
for that.
thing, is he'll kind of play with people when they...
I'm like, I'm not Tony... I will be.
Tony Hawk.
We need to grow out your hair and do this.
We should do an incentive where if somebody beats you, you have to not cut your hair for a year.
I love the shaved head. I love it.
I understand.
I love it,
and
man.
it's efficient.
It's your
especially
look.
for
It's so
traveling sales.
efficient. Who's got time to comb their hair? Like,
So I was flying to Hawaii. Back to the story. I was flying to Hawaii to visit you. This is when you were in Maui.
yeah.
And I remember thinking,
Are we live though?
yeah, we're like,
Okay, I'll cut the jokes to a minimum. Go ahead.
hey, this is, if the jokes are there,
They're not going to be good.
People are
They're
coming
not
into
gonna be
Jon
good.
Sanders' world. So you
Yeah,
got to give
the
them.
people wanna know.
They don't
all
wanna-
you can be is yourself, Jon.
Okay, I'll be myself.
So I'm flying to Hawaii to visit Jon, and I had this very clear thought, like, I just, like, in my job, I get to see a lot of teams, I get to meet with a lot of people, I get access to a lot of minds, and so I always think, man, I wish the reps could hear this. I wish the reps could hear this. And so I had this idea to just, like, record the combos, and back then we didn't even have it on a platform. We had it, like, on...
It's probably your iPhone.
we recorded on my iPhone, but then it was on just SoundCloud, so you needed, like, a link to it. It wasn't, like, hosted anywhere. But it was you and Ed and a couple kids, and we were on your back balcony in your first place in Maui.
And I couldn't get a word in edgewise with my wife.
It was Ed's
podcast.
But dude, it was so valuable because so many people.
Is she gonna hear this
listened to
podcast? 'Cause I was telling Dave, like maybe 6 months ago, she comes up to me bawling, like, "What'd I do? I heard one of your podcasts, and you said the happiest day of your life is when you sold 19 pest control accounts." She's bawling. Is she? Am I gonna get in trouble? Yeah. I'm like, Ed.
Listen. I'm not going to take any responsibility for what happens in your relationship as a result of this podcast.
I got to be careful what I say. She's going to be listening.
Unfiltered, Jon. What I want to know
Hi, Ed,
is
how are
if
you?
you were to rank your top 10 days in your life, how many of those are days on the doors?
All 10.
All 10.
All 10. Because it's come on, guys. It's an endorphin rush.
There it is.
I mean, like.
So what's number 2? If number 1 was 19 pest control.
Well, I'd have to think about that. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
But 19 was definitely my happiest day of my life.
But from that conversation, it's really kind of where this, like, you know, in solar, you're alone a lot. You're knocking doors a lot. You're most of the work you do is solo work. You're contributing to a team, but it's solo work. And so, you kind of started this whole movement. Now there's lots of people that do it and a lot of shared things, but
full circle. I'm
full
still
circle,
knocking.
man. Still
the same
knocking.
person. That seems like yesterday to me too.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Out on the deck.
It was. Yeah. Your family was still living in Maui at that
You
point.
crashed in our
I did. I slept at the house.
the loft. Yeah. You
Yeah,
crashed in
and
the
dude,
loft.
the fun, like, one thing I took away from that visit is the Sanders kids, like, they
wake up in a pretzel. Dude.
Yeah, like they all
Like-
pile in the middle, boys, girls, whatever. They kind of pile up in the middle of the floor and they all just sleep. It's like
Yeah.
it was actually
That's-
like
that's
super
Hawaii,
cool.
though.
It's
That's
like
Hawaii, yeah.
it's like a tight knit family. They're all hanging out.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll just sleep here. So when like
That was
we were
a good
saying,
time.
it was a condo or something like that.
Yeah.
You had three kids. You have
We had 4.
4.
Yep.
And him and his wife, and I had a bedroom. I actually could have chosen between like 3 bedrooms,
Join the
or I
pretzel.
maybe could have joined the
Yeah.
cuddle puddle in the middle.
Yeah.
But the
So this would
Sanders
have been
family is awesome.
2014.
2015 maybe.
2015.
20. Yeah, probably 2015.
Yeah.
Probably could have been 14, but 15. I left in end of 15, I think.
Okay.
For Philadelphia.
Early days. Yeah. Great. So for those that I want to hear the original story of the person that you met in pest control that kind of opened your eyes to what's possible with this job and how it became a career versus just an opportunity to earn in the early days.
Yeah, so I actually gave a training today in
Oh,
LA,
yeah.
and the funny thing is I was like, to build confidence, you need a good mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, my mentor was confidence on steroids. He was nuts. We called
was
him
his
Rambo.
name?
Jeff Davenport.
Jeff Rambo Davenport.
I mean, he was a nut job, but in a good way. And so I worked with him for 3 years, and he was my manager the first year. And then the next year, he and I just went off and did our own thing.
Yeah.
Like, we were knocking, like, easily by 10 a.m.
What market did you start in?
Went to Houston.
Houston.
So Houston was a short time.
Davenport will show up in your backyard at 9 a.m. if you don't answer the phone.
I went to summer school at BYU and then did the last 2 months. And then next year, he recruited me to go. He did a small company, negotiated something. And then the next year we did actually Apex. So I did Apex my last year. And so that's how I got started, is like, you just start early and late, like hardcore.
How'd you meet
hardcore.
Jeff, though? How did you get?
He was a manager in Houston, just coincidence.
But how did you get lined up with him in the first place to go sell
So
pest?
all
Just
my
from
friends,
BYU?
like, that was kind of the thing back at BYU, is like, back then you say, hey, go make 10 to 12,000. And then the first year I did it, I made 62 grand.
Wow.
And then the next year I made 96. And this is back in, I think, 97 now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what?
Pre-cell phone. You're on the flyer.
This is
at that
pre-cell
point.
phone. Like, so we had like those maps.
Yeah.
And we would just,
The Rand McNally.
So
Market.
did you
map.
sell Apex Pest Control?
yeah.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
That
Yeah.
was back in the.
Yeah.
we were
So my
creative
mentor
marketing.
sold 1,000 and I sold 755.
Wow.
And then, funny story, like,
That's like Dave and I. Dave sold his record-breaking quarter, and I sold my record-breaking quarter, and he still beat me by about the same percentage that your mentor. beat
yeah,
me
I mean,
by.
what he did, I thought was like physically impossible to beat.
Yeah.
And then I just told the story earlier today in this meeting, so it's fresh in my mind.
Okay.
But so I started a pest control company. That's the thing, is everybody who was good would just start their own.
Right.
Right. Because all you needed was a truck and like a little canister spray. And I'm in Vegas, and I'm thinking all of Vegas is mine. And I see down the street the goat of all goat of door knockers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, my heart just dropped. It was like, what is going on? And I knew who he was, because everybody knew who he was. And he knocked into me. And he's like, you know who I am? I was like, no, I have no idea who you are. It's like, come on, anybody in pest control knows who I am. I was like, no clue. He's like, I sell 1,400 accounts a summer. I was like, no. I was like, my mentor did 1,000, and it killed him. He had to have his own 2 technicians of his own.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I'll prove it to you. He's like, go knock on that door. If you don't sell it, I'll sell it. Have you heard the story?
Yes, I love this story.
So I go knock on it, and I'm doing the, 100%, trying to get it, not really going anywhere. He sees I'm struggling. Within like 2 minutes, he has that thing closed. And he's doing things I didn't know exist with his hands. He's pointing there. He's talking about construction behind the house. Bugs are underneath the rocks. You got to have so much torque on your sprayer. Like, he's talking about torque and
You gotta
pressure.
have that torque, dude.
And I'm like, okay, this guy is freaking crazy.
Yeah.
He's on a different level. So we get out on the sidewalk. I act like I'm not that impressed. I was like, yeah, I would have sold him, but you
jumped in on me.
You jumped in. And he's like, okay, let's do it again. I'm like, oh, freak, dude. So I go knock on it. And then it's an old lady, $20 a month. You know, we're double the price. She's had her bug guy for like 20 years. And I just tried my best. Dude, within 2 minutes, they're best friends. And she's an old lady. Like, I'm like, what is going on? So after that, that was seriously like life-changing. Like, you can always get better. Because I had plateaued. You know, I thought you like reached the pinnacle.
Well, dude, think about it. Like the math on 700 installs in a summer. So think about it. It's 118 days-ish. So you're selling between
7 a day,
6
basically.
and 7 a day.
But you're really selling like 8 to 10 because pest
you
control, we get a
cancels
lot of
and stuff.
cancellations.
Yeah. So if you're selling 8 to 10 a day, and I mean, that means you're literally selling every 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You're selling an account.
Yeah.
So you just don't have much more time than that. Like,
It's nuts.
It's not possible. It's not like, is it possible to sell 2,000? There's not time.
There's not time.
Yeah.
So I saw him do 1,000, but now I believe he did 1,400 because literally within and they were quick, but it's just the way he talked with his hands. He knew the product way better than I did. He knew how the bugs acted. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, this is pretty cool. So after that, I was always a student of door knocking. That kind of opened my eyes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing.
Main takeaway from that is just you can always
get better.
get better.
To this day, I'm always researching. You know, it's funny though, like when I was in pest control, because it was really, like we were so small school, and when I got into Vivint Solar, like you guys just had a different culture. Like I remember people would come up to me and they're like, hey, what books do you read? And I'm like, I've never read a book. Like, people read books? Like, we just didn't have that culture.
Yeah.
It was just different.
You just had more of like a hustle culture.
Yeah, it was just like on-the-job training, you know, which arguably might be better than books for it. You know,
there's a lot of people now that it's really easy to confuse like development with actual work, right? So some people like sit and read a book when they should be knocking doors.
This will blow you away. So I don't know how many years I've knocked. But guess how many people I've actually followed on the doors? Followed. Not them following me, but me shadowing somebody.
In solar or at all?
It doesn't matter.
Well, we know of at least 2.
Who?
With your mentor and this other guy. But I guess he didn't follow you.
No, he didn't follow me. Well, I didn't follow him, but he took over.
Yeah. He asserted himself on the situation.
One door. And it was
Really?
my mentor, and he happened to sell it. That was the problem, is he sold it. This is the easiest thing in the world. You know, and then that day I ended up like oafing, you know, and then the next day, you know, I had to pick up the pace. And
Dude, that's a pretty common thing with like seasoned sellers, because I saw 2. I saw Eric Mealy sell or knock. He didn't sell. He didn't even get in a house. And then I saw Chance sell one, and that was probably the only sale I saw before my own.
Well, keep in mind when I got into solar, there was nobody.
Yeah.
I think Jeremy Long might have been there, but he wasn't knocking. Like he was on his way out, like catching a flight, and I think Dan Reed were both catching a flight. So I saw them for like minutes.
This was in Mass?
This is in New Jersey.
Oh, Jersey.
And Jeremy's like, listen, look at the dish networks, because he was a dish network guy. He's like, they point south. That's where the panels go. And they said, don't try to sell them on one visit. This is a 2-part sell. And so I'm like, okay. So the first day I went out.
So that's your training.
Yeah.
Look to
that
the
was the
satellite
training.
dishes.
No,
and
literally,
make it
that was
two-
the training.
Make it 2 visits, not 1.
So the first day I went out, set up appointments for the next day, and guess what? No show.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is BS. So it's about 2 o'clock. And then I went out and just tried to close them myself, and I did close 2. And then by day 5, I just had one of those days that was crazy. I did like 8, and I'm getting all these text messages from Jeremy. What the? They couldn't believe it, you know. But here's the thing about solar you guys don't know about. Maybe you do. Like, I had already manifested this whole industry before it happened. I don't know if you know that. So I'm knocking pest control in Murrieta, California, and some dude is just, he owns those big commercial, have you heard the story?
I don't think so.
Big commercial turbines that you see in Palm Springs.
Mm-hmm. Like the big windmills?
And he's like, you guys have crews going door to door? He's like, dude, I need you to go sell energy. I'm like, energy? This is back, like, what the? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, dude, energy, everybody needs it. So he's trying to get me to buy a commercial turbine for my house in Vegas. He wanted to do an even split. And
how big is a
and
commercial
I actually
turbine in a resident? Like, how big would that sucker
no, you
be?
can't do it. Like I don't even know if it's even possible. Or if he's just a
Can
scam
you
artist.
imagine?
But
Yeah.
he wanted my house.
The sound of the wind.
But it literally triggered something in my mind where I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody can say no to energy because they already have it, right? So then what happens is my dad is some business meeting and some guy's like, I'm looking for some door knockers because I got a residential windmill. He's like, well, my son's doing it. So it's some BOU professor, and he came onto this invention, and he's like, okay, you can either buy the right to sell it for $10,000, or you can have the exclusive right for $100K. And I didn't even think about it, just cut him a check for $100K. And it turned out to be a scam. Those things don't exist.
Right.
You don't see them. Like, but for like a year, he just led me along this research and development. It's coming. So all my friends, I'm saying, hey, don't worry. I kind of took a year off. Not, I'd still knock, but not like I would. I say, hey, we're going to be doing this energy.
Residential windmills.
Yeah, all of a sudden my buddy who's at Vivint, okay, he's like, John, Vivint is doing your idea, but with solar. I was like, it blew my mind. So I was the easiest recruit Vivint Solar ever had.
Yeah.
I flew out there. I just sign me up. Went out there for 10 days to go test it. And then the funny thing is like, I should have quit, like, because this is way before you guys. Like, they kind of did the bait and switch, because you show up at the new Vivint office. This was when it was brand new. I mean, it was just gorgeous. Like, it rivals Google in Provo.
Mm-hmm.
You're just blown away how big Vivint got. Mm-hmm. And so I met with Brenchley and Todd Peterson, and they started explaining it to me. And then Tongi's over in I thought it was going to be the solar wing, maybe their own floor. Yeah. It's like, let's go talk to Tongi. So we walk over. We go out the building, which I thought was weird. Go across the parking lot. Yeah. Into another campus. Building. Yeah. Up this maintenance stairway, walking over brooms and mops, and then all of a sudden I see Taylor Turnbull selling Cub Scout cookies and Paul Dixon. those guys are renting it. And I'm like, what is going on? There's so many red flags. But they flew me out to Jersey, and I was like, you know what? If I can make $1,000 a day, because that's kind of what I was doing in pest control, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go do it.
So to make $1,000 a day in pest control, you're selling what? 7?
It's 6? 5 a day.
5.
Five installed. You get about $200 back then. So then, Jersey was. They shut down Jersey because they were going to open up Hawaii and Boston. Mm-hmm. And so there was a 2-month window where you just couldn't even sell. And of course I'm vying for Hawaii, but being that I wasn't Vivint, it went to Dan Reed, and then I got Boston, dude. And it started in February. And this is where I already knew you couldn't knock year-round pest control in the winter, in a climate like that.
Yeah, there's no bugs.
It was so cold, man. It was so cold.
February is the hardest month,
and
too.
There was about a handful of us.
Hit it in January,
and it was just going nowhere, because the utility was, if I remember right, we only saved them 2 pennies, and one utility we saved 5 pennies. So the savings were just enough, where it's intriguing, but it was so fun. It was just throwing spaghetti against a wall, and you have no idea who's gonna. And that's kind of where I met my first assistant, and my only assistant, really, Jonathan. Yeah, Jonathan. Which he adores you. He still asks about you all the time. Where is he? He's actually selling for another company, and he's their top rep.
Oh, really?
Wow.
You remember Jonathan?
When I met Jonathan, he was living in his car.
And you upgraded him.
Yeah, dude, he's family. You know what I mean? He followed me around from Boston. Where did I go after Boston? Fresno. Thousand Oaks.
Oh, shoot. Told you. Floppy Mike.
Hawaii.
It's all good.
Back to Philadelphia. He would literally follow me around. And I paid him, what did I pay him? I think $2,500 a month.
It was funny when I first learned about Jonathan. So when I came to Thousand Oaks, you were in the Thousand Oaks office.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this. There's a couple stories I love about you being in there. But John gave Jonathan the bedroom. So he had this little apartment. And Jonathan got the bedroom, and John slept in the closet.
Well,
so you had an air mattress in the closet.
Not only the closet, it was the closet of another rep, because it was bigger. So Jonathan got his own closet.
We used to do. Yeah, it's now you understand it's the same.
And I wouldn't get home until 2 in the morning, because I'd always go to the office, because back then you just had so much you'd have to call.
Well, and John's a night owl.
Yeah, I'm a night owl, but you're not done knocking until who knows when. And then, dude, back in the day, it's like I just didn't trust anybody, and I shouldn't back in the day because they were, they're a startup. Yeah. So this is stuck. And back then, you could actually call the account executives, which was awesome. So I would be like 2 hours a night. This is stuck. So I would get there probably like at 2 a.m. I just walk in his bedroom, go in the closet. It's a nice little closet, man.
When I found that out, it was so funny. But it was funny because John, like again, the office was there when I got there. You got there a little bit after, and
was it the same office?
Yeah,
I'm sure they've upgraded since then.
They have since then.
Yeah,
yeah, we were in the same office for a while. Yeah. And Sanders would finish knocking at like 10. By the time he got home, come in, do all of his account management, turn the TV on, hit P90X. And we had
Insanity.
Insanity is
different, dude.
We had cameras in the office, so you could flip them on and see John just after a full day knocking, just going after Insanity.
Yeah, I do Insanity.
And then would come
I do want to go back. Dude, I can't find it. If you can find it for me, let me know. I'd love to get back Insanity.
See what I can do. I'll see if I can find it. It's the P90X guy that did Insanity. Right?
No, it's two different guys.
Oh, okay.
There's two different guys. Yeah, Insanity was the upgrade to P90X. You couldn't finish an Insanity workout, Ty.
Challenge accepted. I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty
dude,
wiry.
I'm telling you, that is
I'll
insane. Okay.
I'm sure I can.
Let me know next time you do it.
I'm confident I can.
Yeah, so I would just, man. Oh, that was back when I had to get a DVD and those portable DVD players. You flip up the screen. I was going after the screen.
Yeah, you weren't streaming.
No. You can't. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if you can stream it.
Yeah.
But if you can, let me know.
Our next challenge. Should we do that?
Yeah, dude, we should.
Yeah. We're going to do that.
Take it straight back. So I've told this story before, but I don't know if any of the young bucks know it. So when I came to Thousand Oaks, it was the end of December 2013. And, when I sat in recruiting meetings with Chance, that's how I got recruited.
I met you when you were getting recruited.
Yeah. And Chance would always talk about you. And he'd be like, you got to go knock with John. He's this guy. He's doing like 5 of these things a day. And I always be like, I did alarms for 10 years. And I was like, well, I wonder if I could sell solar. He'd be like, well, John sells like 5 a day. So apparently there's this John guy that could do it. And it was possible. And so when I'd come out, Jake Bevins kind of gave me the lay of the land. But the first person I really knocked with was John.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I had reached out. And I was out there like visiting the market. And we met in a neighborhood. It was 10 or 10:30 in the morning. You had your black Prius.
Yeah.
And I pulled up to the neighborhood. This was in Simi Valley. We pulled up to the neighborhood, and John had already been
I
there.
gave that Prius to Jonathan, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That thing needs
Don't
to
tell
be
my
like,
wife. She'll be so pissed. I hope she doesn't listen to
that
this.
thing's a relic, dude. We need to hang it in the
listening.
rafters at the building.
She's not going to listen. She had no idea where to find this.
We'll make sure she finds
No, don't.
Okay.
No, anyway.
Now we're complicit, and I'm more scared of your wife than I'm scared of you, so I'm gonna give it to her. Anyway, I pull up behind John's car. I'm calling him like, where are you? He's like, oh, I have to come back to the car. So he'd already been knocking, comes back to the car. When he comes back to the car, Jonathan drives by. This is like the first DoorDash with a Subway sandwich and hands it to John.
But it comes to a rolling stop. I don't have time for him to stop.
He doesn't stop.
It's like the baton around the track.
And so I'm talking as John's like eating. In the back of his car, he's got bottles that are his bathroom, so he doesn't have to stop, and cold soup cans, because if he doesn't have lunch, he just down a cold soup from the thing.
Soup.
And I remember saying to you, like,
and some chalk.
Yeah, and some
crayons.
chalk.
Crayons. I upgraded to crayons.
Okay.
And so I remember asking, like, do you always come out and knock this early? Because the schedule was new to me. Like, we didn't have best practices widely distributed. We didn't have like training manuals and things like that. And you said, you're like, well, I usually do because I have to do 2 a day. It takes me longer than everybody else. I don't know if you were just being humble or whatever, but I remember hearing that where it's like, yeah, I need to do 2. It takes me longer than everyone else, so I just get out at 10:30. And I was like, immediately I was like, that's why this guy is so successful. There's no emotion behind it. He's like, this is just what I do. I do it every single day. Got to get 2. That's how I get 2. Just go get 2.
See, that's where my mentor came in, because we had that crazy schedule. And I remember like all my pest control guys are saying, well, no one can keep that up. That because we did it in Boston. I was like, well, let's just try it. But you know what? Once it's ingrained in you.
Yeah.
And that's what I was teaching these guys today. It's like people ask me all the time. It's like, how do you motivate yourself? And I'm like, I don't even think about it. Like, because once you get a routine, that's all you need. Just start a routine, no matter what it is, whether it's 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 4 hours. If you do the routine, that becomes a habit. But and then it becomes a discipline. And then even, I was telling these guys, and then it becomes an addiction. And it really does. Like, there's times where you're like jonesing to go sell. Because, I've always lived away, so I've always taken at least a week off. And by Thursday, I want to get the heck out of there. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like I'm jonesing to hit it again. So it's weird. Like, but you go from routine to habit to discipline to addiction if you do it long enough. You know, because obviously cells are endorphins, so you're going to get that high. That's why the happiest day of my life is when I hit 19. Or, like,
hey, so we need to go deeper. I need to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, were you tight with Vern? Rest in heaven?
He would call me all the time, but he would always try to get me to go sell in his office.
Okay.
Because I was always like I was always just a free agent. It seemed like, it was never. I didn't really have a home. I just kind of bounced about office to office. So, but I loved Vern.
Waldo?
Yeah, I love Vern.
So we had a leadership event. What year was this? When Jocko came?
I think that was that 16?
It was like around 2016. Jocko came, right?
Yeah.
And afterwards we had a Q&A little event with leadership. And Vern, back row, raised his hand, and he wanted to ask Jocko about burnout. Yeah. And we have like the recording, and we've circulated it many times, but in true
it's one of my favorite
Jocko style, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he eviscerates the question. And what was great about it is Vern's just saying, listen, I've been doing this 2 decades. In my circle, I've seen people start to burn out or maybe lose the passion or slow down a little bit. And Jocko, responds, well, it's a choice. And what from one day to the next, you just decide to let people down and you don't care anymore. And it was so interesting. And in a way, like, I understand what he's saying because I actually have a similar belief system. But when I look at you, you're coming on 30 years. Like
I started in 1996.
So I'm saying you're coming up on 30 years.
Yeah, just about.
So I need you to speak to this because to me it's character, but you're 30 years in this game, and I would imagine you'd have strong opinions, but I want to know, like, to what would you attribute your ability to just not just produce, but be maintaining that for 30. You've been at the top for 30 years, and burnout isn't in your vocabulary. So I want you to speak to that. Like, what makes you different? How are you able to?
This is a funny little story because, my youngest son, I've always said, like when he graduated from high school, I'll consider retiring. And then my wife, thinking out loud, thinking like I'm not going to hear it like in the corner. Most people make most of their money from 50 to 60. That's their highest earning potential. And I look at her like, dang, I can be working until I'm 60. It's like, but you know what? It's not really, he says it's not a choice. Like, I wish I could take a day off. Like, that's the one good thing is when I go back to Philadelphia, we're not in Philadelphia.
Right.
Like, we shut down that market. So I can't even work out there, which is good. Or I'd probably be working. You know what I mean? So it comes to a point where it's not even a choice. I think, like, because a lot of my friends who got into it, they made their money, and then I had a big setback. So actually my back was against the wall. And if your back is ever against the wall, dude, you are going to do anything you can to get out of that hole you've dug. And that's kind of when solar started. And I just never stopped, So it's not really a decision. You know what I mean? It just becomes ingrained who you are. But that all starts with a thought. So he's right, because the thought turns into a decision, and then it turns into, your habits and so forth. So I can see that. Like, but I can't really stop. And plus, I love it. It's so fun to me.
See, that's what I was going to say. To me, I think the biggest thing, there's this love for the game that I see in you. And, like, a lot of the top producers that have been in this a long time. It's not just a job.
I love
there's
it.
There's love for the game.
It's a challenge. So the bigger the no, the more the challenge. And I try not to piss people off. I'm getting pretty good at it. But it's a challenge, It seems like the market's changing a little bit. Like back in the day, it was so new. There's just so much low-hanging fruit. You didn't have to be strategic at all. You just pick a neighborhood and just boom, 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 boom. You never go back. Now it's like you really got to network your hood. Mm-hmm. You got to keep meticulous notes. Like this guy I talked to, he's thinking about moving, but maybe not. And then you're going back to all this. So it's changed because we haven't opened up a new market. As soon as they open a new market, I'll probably be there because that's so much fun opening up a new market.
We opened Texas.
Dude, that was like forever ago.
Well, but you didn't go there.
I did.
Oh, you did.
I've knocked in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, I've knocked
You've
everywhere.
knocked pretty much.
I pretty
every
much have
market.
knocked everywhere.
Yeah,
like
you haven't done. You didn't do Colorado.
I'd really not. Well, that's a loan only. I don't want to waste my time there.
Yeah.
Because you think loan would be the best. I remember when loan came out. Remember how excited we were? Loan's out. And then I'm actually in the East Coast, New Jersey, where they get that thing paid off in like 4 to 5 years. Plus they have like 8 more years of SREX where they make money. And it was like you're selling the plague. No, I want to do a PPA. You're like, no, you don't want to do PPA. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And so like, I'll never go. I mean, loan. I don't want to talk about on loan markets if you want to edit it, but loan only, I would never go. But we don't have a lot of loan only, do we?
Not anymore.
If you want to edit that out, I don't know what you guys.
Yeah, we won't. But the
lease is just so unemotional.
Talk about the mindset there, because I think you're right. Like when you were talking about Jocko and you're talking about the choice, I always try to like take a step back and be like, okay. And I've always said like, is this job hard or is it not that hard? Like, because it's actually not that hard, but then it's actually really hard. You know what I mean? And so I look at it like, well, coal mining is hard. And like being in a different country and going out to the rice paddies every day until you're 80 is hard. And so it's like, well, you can go talk to people for a while. But so it does start with the way that you think about the job. And so like personally, I got to a point in my career where I was like, I actually enjoy it. Now, I don't know if that was me shaping that world or if I actually like enjoy it.
I can add to that. And I was telling the guys this morning at the office, I was like, you want it to be really hard, because if it was really easy, everybody would do it and we'd make no money. And the harder it is, it's like mental weightlifting. Like your brain, you hear like something like a doubt coming from a customer, you've heard it 1,000 times, and bam, your neurons just shoot and you don't skip a beat. So the more you mentally lift, the stronger your brain gets, so then it becomes easier, so you want it hard. If it's too easy, we wouldn't have an industry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Brian Tracy. He has that quote in Psychology of Selling. And he says, you should wake up every day and give a silent prayer that selling is so hard. Because if it wasn't so hellishly hard, the market would be saturated with amateurs and your ability to earn would decrease.
Yeah, I've only read 2 sales books.
Is that one of them?
No, but you did recommend one of them. You probably don't remember this, but you told me to read As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah.
And I probably read that book. I don't like to read a lot of books. I like to just read one and just read it over.
You love that because it's so short.
That's the book, though.
That's really short.
That's the book.
The first time I couldn't even, it was too complicated for me. It took me like 10 years later I started to read it, and I was like, oh man, this is actually really deep. But
it's deep, but it's simple, right? Like you read it and you're like, yeah, and then you think about it and you're like,
I read it like
foundational truth stuff.
I probably read it once a quarter at least.
I read it once a year. So you've read it more than me.
Well, it's a great book. And then I can't remember where I was going on this, but where were we talking about?
We were talking about Psychology of Selling and sales being hard, and you should be grateful that it's hard.
And so I tell them just like, you just get out there and it's like, dude, create your own book. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if you can really write a book about door-to-door, because I think door-to-door sales are just completely different. They're just quick. It'd be really hard to pinpoint how to sell door-to-door in a book. You just have to go out and do it. And then you just get better, but you don't even realize you're getting better.
It's a bit like writing a book about riding a bike, because I'm forever teaching kids how to ride a bike because that's just been my last 15 years of life. And I have this friend that says there's nothing harder in life to do than teach a kid how to ride a bike. And I think partly what he's saying, and we talk about this a lot, is sales training. It's a bit like a language. So I speak Spanish. You speak Spanish, right?
Yeah.
Dave speaks Spanish. Bunch of Spanish speakers at the table. So I remember when I was learning Spanish, I would always turn it into, oh, okay, this means this. I'd always translate it. And so I would ask my Spanish teacher, how do you say whatever, some idiom or whatever, that's the way the cookie crumbles. How do you say that? And he'd be and he would try to answer me, and then eventually he's like, you need to understand that English is not Spanish. They're not the same. And so all of this instruction I'm giving you is close, but it's not perfect. And so at some point, you're just going to have to start understanding it and moving with it. And I've thought that about sales training, because it's I can tell you, hey, you have to agree, and then you have to restate, then you have to anecdote, and then you have to transition. But that's as
and
close
see, that
as
right
my
now
words.
just went over my head, because I'm kidding you. I have no idea what you just said.
But even still, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. It's gonna help you sell. No, just kidding. I can tell you how to do it, but my words are insufficient. All I can do is get you close. Once you feel it, it's I could say, okay, you're gonna start pedaling, and then you're gonna feel this universal force, that's balance. And when you feel that pedal and you're like, what? And then you do it and you're like, oh, I can see what you were trying to say. But unless you get out, there's too many people that read too many books about riding the bike. You just need to get on it. And once you feel
they overthink it.
Yeah. But that's the problem with sales training, is that it gets to a point where it's like, I can only train you to a certain amount because words are insufficient, right? Like, you have to feel it. And then you learn, oh, the trainer's words are the closest thing. But you know it. You're unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
You know it in a way that you couldn't describe it.
Yeah, you just have to have an outline and then just follow the outline, and you can't be monotonous. You got to treat it like a conversation, and I try to trick my brain as soon as the person opens the door, like we're immediately friends. Like, I've known this guy for a long time, and then try to get like some type of connection like that, and it works. You can trick your brain into doing that.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, and I was telling the guys earlier, I was like, man, if you need motivation, pretend like your house is on fire. Like, has your house ever been on fire?
No. Well, actually, yeah.
And what happened? Like, you can do miracles when your house is on fire. Like, there's one time in Alpine, I just bought this house and the pipe broke. And I was just telling Dave before this podcast, I don't even know where the hammer is. Like, I don't have a tool, but my wife does. I don't. My wife is out of town. Within like 1 hour, I had 10 to 15 people. It looked like a restoration company in my basement, because my house was on fire.
Yeah.
Like, I would go, it was at 10 o'clock at night. I'd go knock on the neighbor's house. He wouldn't answer. Knock on the he called him. Before you know it, man, I could have thrown magnets on the truck and sold the neighbor, hey, you need some work? Like, it was like a full-on crew.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes if I need a little pick-me-up, I'll just say, hey, my house is on fire, and I'll just go to the attitude on the doors, and it works.
Dude, that's two really good tips. I used to say, like, in a sales slump, don't try to sell, make a friend. Just make a friend. Like, have a good conversation. But
connection.
When you were talking about that, my mind went back to I don't know if you remember this, but I remember the street we were knocking together in Maui, where I was just trying to keep up with you.
Onehehe.
I was just following you around.
Onehehe Street.
And
look
now,
it up.
like, you never told me that about the friends, but I can tell, like, when people come to the door and it's like,
Oh, I act
hey!
like we're best friends.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a really good tip.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, I love this, because when I think about like the best people to do the job, I immediately think, in fact, one guy, I was talking about you a month or two ago, and I said, I think the greatest the language I used was, I think the greatest prospector that's ever lived is Jon Sanders.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Like, when I think about different people and their skills, like I can think of people like in the home, they're the pros, like they're the closers. When I think of you, I think of
prospecting,
the best prospecting.
Yeah, and then I'm horrible at the back end. That's not my strength. That's why I've always pushed. Like, that's why I love.
That's why you got a guy living in the
I
room
love
while you're
Sunrun.
living in the closet. Right?
Yeah, I have to have people like
He's helping.
do the back end for me.
Yeah.
Because I love to create the lead. I would have closers. Like, Jonathan was never a closer.
Right.
Because remember, we had to close at the door knock.
Right.
So whenever you have signatures, I consider that
He
the
was
closer.
your administrator. He was the one
Yeah,
that went around.
like it was just random. Like, one night we're just sitting at the computer room at the apartment complex, and I'm like, dude, he didn't have a job. He was living out of his car. His mom lived there, and I'm like, dude, can I just pay you to get these? If people say yes, just to schedule an installation, because it was so new. Like, we had no idea if they're gonna. There's no savings, so it's not like. And he would literally close them, but it didn't require a signature. And he scheduled the install. If we need permit signed, he'd go get that. But now, when Sunrun, or maybe Vima Solar actually changed it, where now you don't need a signature for the design. Right. So then I tried to get a closer, and they sucked at it. So I'd go create the lead, and then they'd go get the signature, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. So ever since then, I've just been doing it myself. Sunrun is so they evolve. They just get better and better and better. Like, the back end now, I have very little back end.
Yeah.
It is so nice.
It used to be such a thing. Like, remember the amount of, like...
They're too good. They're texting me. I'm like, I know there's a hold on it. I don't need a text every, that's how good they're. But before, it's like, you're reminding them. Now they're reminding you.
Yeah, it's great.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. Like, for a sales guy, it's perfect. I love it.
I need to rewind, though, a minute, because we're talking about your superpower. To me, it's prospecting. And you've talked about what makes you different a little. And it's obviously your consistent approach. You're there every day. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Number two, it's the relationship of trust instantly. It seems like is a big difference maker for you.
Yeah.
What else?
I could be older, I think that helps. I mean, I see these 18-year-olds. I mean, I'm not trying to talk an 18-year-old from doing it, but my son's like, hey, should I go do this? I'm like, go do alarm or pest control. Go learn or just go get an internship. I mean, to just jump into, it's a 25-year agreement. I think being older helps because people look at me and they're like, okay, this guy is legit.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an advantage being older.
Okay.
They just treat me different, and plus I'm good looking.
All right. Well,
when you see a good looking old guy,
you are.
I'm very rarely going to get turned down.
I'm 22, and I want to be the next Jon Sanders, and I'm articulate, and I work hard, and relationship building's my thing. But like, I'm trying to figure out how to be more dynamic prospecting. What am I missing? Like, what can I get from Jon Sanders? I'm on the door, right? Signs of life, all that stuff. You're in front of a customer, they come out. What is different about you versus everybody else?
I think some people, and maybe I'm wrong, but some people just are kind of born with it, like an internal force. Like, I've not done a lot of recruiting because, I don't want to see them fail, and I see so many fail. But the crazy thing is, I had this return missionary who was in the mission with my son just recently, and he was just dead set on doing solar. So I'm like, let's do it. Goes out to Fresno on his own. I didn't even train him. And he reminded me of myself. Like, the meeting's over. He wants to go knock. I'm like, dude, I want to go hang out with Adler for a second. You know what I mean? We're going, he buys lunch.
Yeah.
But he's out knocking. I couldn't believe it. I go out there to give him a shirt. He's out knocking. So maybe some of it is just innate. Like, there's an internal force.
But I'm stubborn, and I'm 20. What I say, I'm 22, and I don't know if I'm born with it, but I have the desire and the work ethic, and I'm going to get better. And I need to know what Jon Sanders is doing outside of his age, and outside of his God-given ability,
and his good looks.
And his good looks.
You can't train good looks. I've tried to train good looks.
You're on the door, and the customer comes out, and obviously your MO, your strategy is, this guy's going to like me instantly.
Mine's a numbers game. Here's the thing: is like I cover so much hood. So back in the day when the manager, I used to hate that. I need more hood.
Yeah.
Because I cover so much hood. And that was when I wouldn't milk it like I should have. Because there's just so much of it. But it's really a numbers game because once you hang out with me, it's like I'm nothing. People like. I remember I went knocking doors with Jordan LaPlace once because he wanted to see what I was doing.
Yeah. And
then afterwards, he's like, how do you sell so many? Like, I don't, your pitch is like, it sucks really. Like, so I think I just work really hard. I don't ever quit. I never quit. There's sometimes I remember where I could have come home with zero. I just kept on going. So living in Hawaii, okay, family would come visit, friends would come visit. And you know how many days I took off?
None.
0.
I remember being my first trip with the company. It was the megawatt trip. And I remember being it was a Mediterranean cruise.
And
blast. We were at dinner, and you showed up late to dinner because you arrived a day later because you needed an extra day to work. And so it was just your wife at dinner. And then we couldn't find you a couple days later, and you had left.
Yeah.
Because you had to get back to the doors. So you showed up late and left early.
I planned vacation.
Can't tell anybody in Italy.
I remember maybe my 15th anniversary. I purposely did it in Hawaii so I could go knock doors because I was knocking in Fresno back then. I desperately wanted to get to Hawaii. For some reason, it's just like it feels like you're on vacation. So, and man, solar's been, I'm telling you, it's been a huge godsend because doing pest control, I sold a lot of accounts, sold 3 or 4 companies. And by the time I transitioned to solar, I was in debt $300,000. You're like, how is this even possible? I sold over 10,000 pest control accounts, 10,000. And I'm in the negative, So I was never really sold on pest control because you're thinking about something. You know how many things I've sold door to door? It's unreal. If you're not sold on that product, people would come up to me, hey, we need you to test radon testing in Utah because people are dying from radon. I'm like, okay, I'll go try that. A friend of mine, his wife was a trainer, so I went to go sell trainings door to door to fat people. Try that sell. Food storage. I sold food storage. You name it, dude.
Wind turbines.
I manifested. I'm not
Mythical
kidding. When I
turbines?
found out like Vivint Solar was doing it, it was just like a beeline right to corporate. They probably thought it was going to be a hard. I had just signed with because I was out of Pest. I just had a bad experience with Pest, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go try alarms, and I'd signed what do you call it, signing bonus with AMP, and I went down for a weekend to Arizona to go try it out. First day, Saturday, sold 5 alarm counts first day. And so I was going, alarms, it's my work. But then as soon as I found out, a beeline, AMP was so pissed. They're like, what are you doing? Do solar later. Now they're all in solar. This was funny. Because,
Of course.
But I have always wanted to sell something that, because if you truly love sales, you truly love it, you want to sell to anybody. There's not a single thing they can say that's legitimate that gets you off the door, because it's a sunk cost. Like, everybody has to have it. So it doesn't matter which demographic. So I'd be comfortable selling my grandma. Like pest control, I just didn't like it. I wouldn't sell my grandma pest control. There's no bugs in the winter. It's like, how do you feel good about taking people's money? They just don't need it. So I've never sold on pest, and that's probably why there you go. Your thoughts, if you're not in it, the book As a Man Thinketh. Like, I was literally $300,000 in debt. So my back was against the wall. So when I solar, like, I was just like, holy cow! I'm like 37 years old. A lot of my friends are now retiring, and I'm just starting. But it was amazing. Like, got there in February. My first install wasn't until July, but then by the end of the year, I'd made $300K by the end of the year. And then after that, it's never looked back. Never even thought about doing pest control or anything else. And then now Sunrun has just evolved where, like, you can't miss with Sunrun. They got the whole market share. Like, you need it, they got it.
What's advice
top to bottom
when now you work with Adler and the LA team, and it's awesome to see the growth. Like, that's like sparked kind of the growth in Southern California post NBT. What do you love about working? Because Adler's so young and hungry. What excites you about that dynamic that you're in now?
Well, I'm going to take zero credit, but I love Adler to death. He's like coming for your job eventually. Like, he's the typical sales guy.
Yeah.
He looks the part. Great sales guy. So I just love that energy. And you never know, like, eventually I do want to dive in 2 feet, because right now I'm still focused on a lot of sales because I'm good at it and I love it. But eventually I do want to find something where maybe it's with Adler, we just build that market. That market's obviously the next big one. It's got the most potential. So it's like, I just want to work with the best of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and I are a lot alike. So
with a bunch of new reps, like, you've always had new reps follow you and experienced reps.
Yeah.
What's advice that you give to new reps, or maybe even what's something that the people that want to come knock with you, what do you wish you could just shake and put into their brain? What are they missing?
You don't really look at the numbers. You just look at your pitches. You know what I mean? And your hours.
Your inputs.
Yeah, because it's like, you're going to get better. You're going to get better. You're going to get better. Like, you just don't quit. Like, if you quit, man, it's like, now the next job you have, you're kind of structuring yourself. And my advice is like, you just treat it like a full-time job. If you treat it like a full-time job, you're going to get better. There's rooms for leadership, recruiting. There's so many avenues to make money. Dude, the paychecks are, we had people in our office today, their paycheck was $40,000, several of them. It's like, it's pretty crazy, Yeah. Back when we started, I don't know what we were making before, but it was like peanuts.
You used to have to do volume. You used to have, like, that's the one thing is people would say, like, to this group here, how do you sell so much? And it's like, well, in order to, like, keep growing in income, I had to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you, from your previous job or whatever to this one, like, remember you, like, especially we were all up in, like, small systems. We used to get paid per kilowatt, and we didn't have any kind of, like, factor as to how valuable the account was. It was just a kilowatt.
Yeah, I remember like
$3,000
seemed to be like a big one.
That was
right?
a big one.
Yeah,
that was a big one. And so people were like, how'd you sell so much? I was like, well, if you really want more volume, cut pay by 90%. People start moving a lot of volume.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
then
We're not doing that, but I'm just saying, like, that's...
And, you know, it's like you just got to be motivated, like, by money. Like I said, my back was against the wall. I'm like, dude, I should be somewhere where I'm not. And so I just hit the ground running. But you just really have to just work, man. There's no secret sauce.
Is it the fact that they don't have the work ethic? Or are they looking for the wrong thing? Or are they trying to be...
Well, here's the thing. Like, again, door-to-door is not for everybody. Everybody can try it, but it just weeds everybody out, which is a good thing, or we wouldn't get paid as much. But... If you want to get better, you can do it. I mean, the leadership's there, the resources are there. Again, like the training manuals are top notch. You know, like it's now down to a science. It's like funny when I left, you know, to go to that dealer, and I came back, I was like in awe. Like it was a completely different company. I mean, you turned it into like a league and all these athletes, and I came back and I was like, what the crap's going on?
Let's talk about that. There was a time when, I mean, you've been in a lot of different companies. You were doing solar here.
Yeah.
You said you haven't looked anywhere else since then. But there was a time you went to a dealer. It was a Vivint dealer, right? Like it almost maybe
so
felt
what
like
happened, to give you
similar
a perspective
company,
why I left, is like, so remember, like Hawaii was shutting down. You know, and once you knock in Hawaii, like it just becomes a part of you. So most of the Hawaii reps actually stayed there. And they were going to do like solar water. And Sunrun was saying, hey, we're going to try batteries. So they were kind of waiting around for Sunrun because Vivint wasn't going to try it. Mm-hmm. So Philadelphia was opening it up. But back then, remember, East Coast was killing it. Like the best offices were Maryland,
the
Massachusetts.
pay was kilowatts.
Yeah.
They had
like
the big sizes.
Maryland was the best office, you know. Yeah. They had the worst metrics. And so Philadelphia is opening up. I'm like, dude, I'm going to take Philadelphia. So, you know, I went out there. The problem is you just don't know what a market is until you've done installs, right? So they were denying about 30 to 40% of your accounts because the grid is so old. So they need batteries, but you know, obviously you can't do batteries. And so I was kind of pissed off because, you know, like I feel like I wasted like 9 months, and then they wanted me to go to Jersey.
Wasted 9 months trying to make Philly happen.
Yeah. Like, and it was a lot of work because, you know, I was a manager. I actually went to meetings. That was the first time I went to meetings.
I actually went to meetings.
Dude, I was doing trainings. I'm like, how many trainings? This is so hard to come up with new trainings. I'm like, dude, this is killing me. And so Florida was opening up with a loan. And so I went out to Florida, and I'm still commuting because I'm living in Philly. And all of a sudden, like, the Hawaii guys are calling me saying, dude, Sunrun is doing batteries at the same rate. And I'm like, what? Are you same rate? They didn't even add. So I just didn't even tell Chance or anybody. I just flew out there, and I was like sold. So I think I did that for like 6 to 9 months. And then that's when Vivint Plus came around, and they're just offering ridiculous signing bonuses for people that didn't work for Vivint Solar. Mm-hmm. So because I was working for that dealer, I could go to Vivint Plus. And that was a nice idea because it's Vivint Plus. You know, like they pitched John, hey, we got 3,000 reps. We're going to give you leads. We're going to give you reps. But it just never, it was just a hard relationship for some reason. And then, you know, I was going to get into more leadership, but they're like, John, we really need you selling. You know, so I was like, all right. Because they gave me like a guarantee. So I felt like I had to do what they said. Yeah. And so, but that was kind of the perspective, is like, I'm in Philly. I can't work in Philly. My family, they don't want to move anymore because they're like, dude, this is it. Now they're in high school, you know, junior high.
They stuck to that too. When you said that last time,
they won't move today. Yeah, they're like, they love Philadelphia, and I've loved Philadelphia.
You guys went from Maui to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is the spot.
They love it. It's crazy. Like I've tried to get them to move at least to Utah, you know, because I love to snow ski, and they won't do that. They love Philadelphia, and it's been good because if it's not broke, you don't fix it. Like the school district is one of the top in the nation, and they've all turned out to be good kids. Because that was a big worry of mine, is like I've been gone so much. Like, dude, my kids are bound to like get into gangs. You know, I'm waiting for them to get like these tattoo gangs, and you know, like they've been good kids. Because I heard a stat, I don't know if it's true, but the biggest influence on your kids is their friends' parents, because they're not going to listen to you. So you know, they listen to their friends' parents, and we live in a great zip code. Like these kids come into our house and they're like, hey, Mr. Sanders, how you doing? I'm like, oh, no, call me John. Okay, thanks, Mr. Sanders. Thanks for him. It's so crazy. They're just different kids, really good. So all my kids have just, I was nervous about it, but they turned out to be really good. So people say, John, how are your kids turn out so good? I'm like, it's called no parenting. 'Cause literally,
You should
if I wrote a
try.
book,
It's called
it would just be
parenting.
no parenting, and that would be it. My wife gets mad when I
Yeah,
say
I was
that.
gonna say, and then your wife's like, "No parenting." John.
But literally,
John,
I've
will you
done.
write a book?
I've literally done.
We need you to write a book.
And I think like they don't need two moms. Like, say if you're always there, like kids don't want your dad bugging them. They just want you to see your dad do well. You know what I mean? Like provide. So it's worked out good. But you do have to have, like my wife amazes me because, like a couple weeks ago, I'm sitting on the counter. You know, she's literally on the phone. But when she's on the phone, she's like this with her neck. For some reason, she doesn't like headphones. She's cooking. My son comes over with an algebra homework. I'm like, is she doing algebra? Cooking and on the phone? And then she like steps over the Roomba, like in sync. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? I mean, there's a special place in heaven for wives.
Yeah.
Because they got to wear so many hats.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I say that, she does get really mad. But I do tell people that. I'm like, dude, it's just called no parenting. Like, I don't think they want to be parented from their dad. I mean, this is not parenting advice, but this has worked with my kids.
So what about those that have it? Because Dave asked about people that like are getting started and are young and want it, and you kind of said, you know, some of it is innate, and you got to measure your inputs. But what about somebody that like you'll see them, they do 15 installs a quarter consistently, and they're good, right?
Yeah.
But they want to, or at least they think they want to, really hit the next level. What do you see in those people? What's missing, or what advice would you give them?
Step it up, man. Just do it. Yeah, you can do it. 'Cause if I'm doing it, you can do it. Like, it's definitely doable. Like, you just have to make up your mind and you just do it.
Why do you
Like,
think they don't?
it gets easier over time.
Yeah.
Like, here's the thing is, like, I work less hours than I used to, and I make the same amount of money or even more. You know what I mean? Because how the pay scale is. And so you get better at it. Like, I figure I can knock less now than I used to. I used to just, like, 10 o'clock all the way. Now sometimes it's like 2 o'clock, which is embarrassing. 2 o'clock is kind of what I shoot for now. But now I'm in Hawaii. I go to the beach in the morning, I go to the gym, and then 2 o'clock I'm fine. Because I'm different. I'm 51 years old. You know, I'm not like 36 with my back to the wall, you know. But it's just if you want it or not.
Yeah.
If you want it. And it's fun, dude. Selling is a drug. Man, if you get a bill, how fun is that? You got $1,000 bill? Like, it's like a shot in the arm of an endorphin.
I'm really interested in that group too, Ty, because when you think about like to get to 15 installs today, consistently quarter over quarter,
yeah, you're hustling.
You're hustling to get there, but I feel like the ability, if you're someone that's a consistent 15, to add 5 accounts is easy. Like it's easy. Like you
already have the 5 accounts.
Yeah,
actually.
and so I'm so curious by that because like I've heard the school of thought from some people and I don't understand it where it's like, okay, I actually can do less now. I don't have to work as much to make what I used to make.
Yeah.
To me, my mind is instantly, if I just keep doing what I'm doing, I get to make double now. So I feel like you have that same mindset or you have for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I feel like for someone that's 15 trying to level up, to me, it's simply just a question of adding another couple hours. That's it. Like, I don't think they need to do much else.
It's really just trying to, if they said, hey, when it gets dark, just get one account, one lead after dark.
Yeah.
And that stuff adds up.
It adds up.
You know? So really, like, the biggest thing is, like, when you feel the urge to quit, you know, the 40% rule, like, you're really at 40% of your capability, so you have a whole another 60% in you, but your mind's tricking you. Right. You know what I mean? So you can go harder, you know, but you don't want to kill yourself. You just go one more. But man, it adds up.
Yeah.
Well, I think the key is having those little systems. I've been doing with the league tour or the Run X Tour teams. You know, these people that are in like this. There's, you know, the top 20 finishers, whatever. They put together these teams, right? And I've been doing these FaceTime calls with them. And it's funny. I was with Jeff Selnicker's group yesterday. And
I love Jeff, by the way. He's literally one of my favorite people.
Yeah, it's because you guys think the same.
Dude, he is awesome. I met him for the first time in Vegas.
Yeah, you guys are.
I was like, dude, we are kindred spirits, man.
Yeah. So it's funny because I think they thought we were going to say, hey, go out and get them. You guys are awesome. But if I got 8 hungry people, we're training like I wanted to train. And so one of the tips, and I can't give you all the tips because there's other tour teams listening, but the one thing that I talked about is if you're selling 15 or if you're installing 15 or you're installing 25, you're likely talking to the same amount of people. You're likely working the same amount of hours and likely you have comparable skills. what I found with the 15 people, and you're good at this, like they water the seeds more. They harvest more. They get more from their yield, right? Or they get more yield from their harvest. And so you're out there all day and you're planting seeds. But one thing that's good with you is you have your notes, and you'll follow up with people that other people would have just walked by.
Yeah.
And so it's like I equate it to people who have planted seeds, but then you just got to sprinkle a little water on those, and not all of them will grow, but you only need 1 in 5. And so one thing we talked about was in the morning, and this is something you do, and this is something Dave used to do 2 power hours a day. You did your power hour at midnight like a maniac.
Yeah.
But I was meticulous about my power hour, and I think the thing that's interesting is a lot of people think their power hour, this is going to get really granular, but a lot of people think their power hour is emailing, design, and finding out if it, no. We have CX pros that can do that.
Yeah.
Like, we have really capable people that you could say, and honestly, they're probably following up with you on them. Most of the time should be spent maximizing the schedule. Texting the person that you met yesterday that didn't end up texting you a bill, following up. And when you're sitting in your seat at 8:15 in the morning doing that, I always say, like, okay, so say, for example, I met you yesterday. Or, no, I was knocking doors 2 weeks ago. And we had met this guy. And I can't remember if I've told the story on here. But he was home. He was a no-hit. His wife's name was on the house, and she wasn't home. So, like, probably not selling that guy. And so we said, okay, you know what? On our way back, I'll tap your door and catch your wife or whatever. And then we got selling in another house, and so it was too late by the time we came out, and we never talked to him. And so the next morning, I'm thinking, text that guy and say, hey, it was late last night, but I have an appointment a couple doors down. I'm going to stop by. And one of 3 things are going to happen. Either he's going to confirm and say, that's awesome, and now I've got a potential sale for the night. He's going to say, I'm not interested. If he says he's not interested, now I'm selling. Cool, totally understand. I didn't get a chance to explain it to you. Oh, I'm selling. Well, the cool thing about sitting in my chair is I could be selling 4 people at once. I can be in those. It takes no time and no energy, right?
Yep.
Or he's going to ghost me. And if he ghosts me, I just throw him back into that rotation tomorrow, and I'm going to keep going on it. But here's the point, is I think somebody that's doing 25, 30, 40, they have a habit of doing that, and they're just getting 1 or 2 more a week. So if you think about it, when we go golfing, and I go golf with someone that's really good, and they score 82, and I score 99, I'll look at it and I'll be like, I don't think you're a better golfer than me. I had better drives sometimes. I felt like I drove as many greens as you drove. But 1 stroke a hole doesn't feel like much, but that's 18 strokes. It's massive. And so, like, I've seen you prospect to where it's like, oh, I have to stop by this person's house. I have to follow. And you're basically, like, watering all these seeds you've planted versus people that aren't intentional. That's where it is. It's not that they have to get their pitch tweaked or they have to read 3 more books or interview 4 more mentors. They just got to spend the time and then take care and account for the seeds that you've planted.
You want to hear something crazy? Maybe you've already heard this, but I'm a huge tennis fan. Go to the U.S. Open every year. Love it. And I'm actually really good, by the way.
I actually think
I'm really good. I'm actually really good at tennis. But Roger Federer, okay, has won 88% of his matches. Okay. What percent of the points do you think he's won?
It's like 52% or something, right?
It's 54%.
Yeah. How is that?
It's nuts because he does just a little bit extra. That's it. So it's like now you really have to get creative because we just don't have the endless amount of virgin territory that's never been knocked, which is our dream. You know, Dave and I would just, if you open up another market, I would literally be there tomorrow. Puerto Rico, say the word, I'm there. You know, Guam, I'm there. You know, but
hey, if any of you guys had your eyes set on Guam, back down.
You have to, dude. You have to be creative now. But there's ways to get sales other than just cold calls. And it's a lot of text messages. So when you set an appointment, get their number, and dude, people are going to respond eventually. You know, if you really believe in the product, which, dude, the batteries are game changer, man. Yeah. It is so fun selling batteries because now you have a whole nother.
It refreshed the whole market.
Yeah. Now you have another foot in the door with the batteries. I mean, that's what I pitched. So 4 years ago when batteries opened, and it's funny because you called me, and I think, or maybe it was Jordan, like. At the end of my contract with Vivint Plus, because I had to sign a 2-year contract, dude, I was done. I didn't have a good experience.
Yeah.
I was literally had another job.
Yeah.
Okay. And all of a sudden, Jordan's like, or maybe it was you, we're opening up Maui. was like, oh shit, the only thing he could say to get me back in. I was like,
I remember
seriously.
that conversation, yeah.
I went there early, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, we're not ready yet. I was like, I don't care.
I remember.
I was like, send me there early. And then he's like, we need like 10 to 12 people there. I'm like, no, we don't. Just tell me how many accounts you need and I'll get it.
We always said, okay, well, if you're going to do it with you and one other guy, you need an insurance policy. Because if you stub your toe or break your ankle, then it shuts the market
Jonathan.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
But
I think that's right. Like, because again, even like being creative and following up and things like that, it's not more, it ultimately goes all the way back to what you started talking about, which is the way you think about it, because it's efficiency. Efficiency is minimal input for maximum output, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're sitting at home and you have 45 minutes, what I can do in 45 minutes with a schedule and like a cell phone, it's amazing. You could talk to 15 people. And the cool thing is, if they reject me, what most people do is they'll get to the neighborhood and their brain will be like, go check on that guy's bill. And they're like, oh yeah. So I have to stop what they're doing, walk around the corner, see if he's home. He's not home. Walk all the way back, get back in the zone. It's 30 minutes optimistically, right? But if you can,
and they're
text
choosing
them,
to do that because what they're really doing is they're trying to act productive because they don't want to be productive.
feels like work.
Yeah,
Feels like
so
work,
it feels
yeah.
like work, but it's disguised as work, but it's really not work.
That's right.
I can always tell someone who's going to make it, actually, because I remember this dude flew his whole family out to someone knocking in Oahu, and we gave him his area, and he literally mapped out, like, you could run their credit.
Yeah.
I'm like, you spent a week running people's credits without knocking?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And guess what? He became my assistant. Like,
You're like, if you can map territory for
but
me,
people
that'd
do
be
that.
great.
They think, okay, I'm going to be productive.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to go map this stuff out. I'm like, what good does that do you? It doesn't do any good. They're just avoiding being productive. I guess it makes them feel good
Well, it's
thinking they're
focusing-
being productive.
Yeah, it's focusing on the wrong thing in the wrong phase.
It's worse than procrastination. Procrastination is like just being lazy.
Yeah.
This is like thinking you're being productive, but you're not. And a lot of reps are guilty of that.
Yeah.
Like I had a co-manager in Philadelphia, and he'd stay in the office the whole time trying to put out fires that probably aren't even there. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Don't be the office market leader.
Yeah, you don't be the office
Don't
guy.
be the office guy.
The office guy. What you were talking about earlier was
Is that
like,
a DM?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just saying, like, what you're talking about earlier with jonesing to get out knocking.
Yeah.
I always love that because when you're wired for efficiency, you personally feel it. It hits 2 o'clock, and if you're not in the market, you're like, ooh, like, I know I shouldn't be here. But there's certain markets that I love visiting because it's like, okay, I want to sit and meet with you guys. And they're like, I can tell they have that itch to get out. And it's like, that's somebody that's on their own mission. That's somebody
Yeah.
that's on their own journey.
And see, that's what I'm wondering if it's kind of innate. So my mind, people have an abundance mindset. Mine's kind of the opposite. Like it's finite, like it's limited. So I want to get it before somebody else gets it. And that's kind of what drives me is if I don't go sign them up, freaking Fusion's going to go sign them up. So if I see a Fusion car, I'll slash their tires. No joke. I swear. Do they listen to this?
I don't know, man. Hey, listen, I just put it out there.
Okay.
Whoever listens to it.
I've
listens.
literally, I'm just teasing. I've never slashed their tires as far as I know, but I literally
As far as you
like,
can
I look at
remember.
competition as like, it's probably a bad thing. It's probably,
I don't think that's bad.
Because-
I think saying if you don't install it, somebody. Well, this is one thing we always say. Like, renewable energy is happening. That it's already been decided. It's more efficient. It's more cost effective. It's more innovative. It's better for the planet. It's better. It's like electric cars. That's happening, right? Now, if you don't sell it, they're likely going to get it from
Yeah,
somebody else, and
they
they're
are.
not going to be with a company that can take care of them like we can, and it's not going to come from someone that's trained like you.
yeah. And our biggest competitor is Sunrun. And the great thing is the Fusion, they team up for you. I mean, how many they can't close and you walk like, hey, the guy never showed back up because they're college kids. It's like free money. Love it.
That's even a unique mindset, though. You should recognize that because from where Dave and I sit, not everybody thinks that way very clearly. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, these guys are taking."
Oh,
my deal."
if I know
It's
like
the way-
Fusion's been in there, that's like easy money.
but
dude.
that's you're hardwired to optimize for situations because you'll say stuff like, "Oh, nobody's in Maui. Let me get out there. I want to do batteries."
in a Sonova account.
But so many
I could do blindfolds,
so many
but-
people would say like, I'm not going to sell a single battery until someone else figures it out. Some people would say, dude, if Fusion's there, I'm staying far away. This is terrible. And you're like, this is awesome that the company tees it up. You're wired.
And I'm
for
sure I've teed up a lot for
optimization.
them. You know what I mean? So it's like you just
Yeah.
got to get out there.
But recognize that as a strange, like it's not a strange thing. It's an evolution. It's an advantage. It's part of the reason that you're good is because you look for reasons that you can be successful, not excuses for.
Is Fusion listening to this, or
I don't know.
Oh. Are they part of ours? I don't even know, but
yeah,
I like Fusion.
Okay.
I like Fusion. They're cool guys. No, seriously, they're cool guys. I like them.
They're the best. Yeah,
cool.
It's great. It doesn't matter what it is because something is gonna, my dad used to say this thing where he would say some people you give them a bag of gold and they bitch about how heavy it is, right? It's just like such an illustration about mindset because it's literally like some people are like, oh, you give me this gold, how am I gonna get to the bank? And some people are like, it's gold. I mean, do whatever.
Think about what we do. It's like you go through a neighborhood and realistically you're gonna get 1 out of 10 people that's a true lead at that time because it's door to door. You know what I mean? So it's like you go through another week and it's a completely different neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing, like, because I probably knocked some of these streets. It could be like 8 times. You know what I mean?
Especially
people see me, they either run or like, oh boy, I'll just endure it one more time.
LA, you got a little more turf now.
They're like, they'll hide from me. Yeah. I know you're back there. Yeah, it's fun, dude. I'm super grateful because if you think of where I was, like literally with pest control, like if solar didn't come around, like it's been life altering. Yeah. Like I got a little Airbnb side business now. I could literally just do that if I wanted to. You know what I mean? But not without solar. Solar put me in that position. So super grateful. And they just keep getting better and better. They just need to open up some new markets. Yeah. But I understand why they don't. But I would love it if they did.
Yeah, I mean everybody's tuned to the same thing, right? There's a lot of things that have to line up. It's one of those things though where you were talking about. It's a good thing that sales is so hard. It's actually a good thing that this business is so hard. It's a lot. Like,
oh yeah, you're right.
It's a cash intensive business, right?
Right.
And so being able to put a $50,000 asset on a roof in exchange for $150 a month, whatever the numbers are, that's a hard thing to do. And so the fact that it's hard is awesome because it does keep amateurs out of the field for the most part. It does it does make it so that you can differentiate. It's real challenging, but that has its securities if you're willing to do it. Same thing as knocking doors. Like, it's so hard. The perks are there if you're willing to do it, but it will test how willing you are to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What are you excited about for the next? I mean, you basically said until your son graduates high school, that will be your option. When does your son graduate high school?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
What are you excited about in the coming 2-3 years?
What I really want to do is become a ski bum. I want to get one of those Mercedes Sprinters, just deck it out like I could live in that thing. It's funny because I was telling Dave before this podcast, like my wife and I, an amazing relationship, but we are so independent. Like we're not clingy. So there was times where she travels all the time, I travel all the time. We literally, unbeknownst to ourselves, had a layover in the same airport. True story. So I just want, she could care less if I become a ski bum. You know what I mean? So I think I'm just going to become a ski bum. I'm just going to start on the East Coast. Every year, Adam McClellan and I, we do this mogul race.
You know about this?
Yeah.
Are you a skier?
I'm not.
I mean, the prettiest thing.
These two old sales dogs just doing a sport that will beat the crap out of your knees.
Dude, he literally calls me up because he had like a lead in Oahu or something. And he's like, dude, can you help me out with this? I'm like, what are you up to? He's like, oh, just getting ready for my mogul race. I'm like, mogul race? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, up in Killington. Dude, I was literally in Maui. I took next day's flight just to make it. And in my mind, this is how delusional I am. So I think to be a good sales guy, you have to be kind of delusional. In my mind, I thought I was going to win it.
It's like, I might win.
I know, being from Utah, because my circle of friends I ski with, I freaking dominate, which are my kids when they suck. I'm waiting for them to keep up. So anyway, I get there, dude, and there are like former Olympic world-class skiers, and I took dead last. Dead last. You can't even, they actually made an extra spot for me. So, and I was like, dude, I took it to heart. I was like, okay, dude, I'm going at it. So the whole next year, dude, my mindset, I'm on the treadmill thinking about these moguls. And then the next year, dead middle. So I went from dead last to dead middle.
That's a big jump.
And then this is last year, 50th.
Out of how many?
150.
Okay. Top third.
Yeah. So we'll see what it is this year. You know,
I
like
think
if I can
he'll
crack
probably win.
Adam, he
win.
qualifies every freaking year.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't think he's a good skier, but he's like, what? He blows you away. He's really, really
What
good.
does qualifying mean? Top
30,
what?
32.
Okay.
So
The
you
funny
get to,
thing
like,
is
the
the
main
first
event,
year,
you get to the big show.
the first year, dude, you're not supposed to do backflips. He literally tried a backflip. I have it on video. It's the
I've
craziest
seen
thing.
it too.
I'm like,
He's
what?
wearing that like purple gear. He's a big guy in
freaking
purple gear
back-
trying to backflip.
He's like super agile. I mean, it's a lot of fun. So we go the day before. He's got a cabin up there. We go hang out. Dude, he travels with an entourage. You know that, like all the Boston reps. And I kind of feel like, for some reason, they think I'm like the Godfather of Boston. Like I'm an honorary Bostonian.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of fun. We do that every year.
So
But
ski
that's
bum and Guam in your future.
yeah. But I'll always sell. You know what I mean? But you know, I've always, you know, if you could tame me down, I would like to get into maybe like with Adler, we try to build something up, or you never know. But I just have to be. I'd be good at it, but it's like you have to want it.
How do
You know
you see if you can articulate this? But how do you seize opportunities with an open mind versus fear? I mean, from mogul skiing to opening new markets to knocking doors to switching from pest control. Like, to walk me through that thought process
Here's the thing
of how
is-
you eliminate fear.
Okay, the whole thing is like action. Because here's the thing: is like, let's say this mogul race, you know, because by the time we are turned, the moguls they're massive. I mean, everyone's skiing the same line, and it's icy, and you got the cowbells. The whole town's there. It's a town event. It's like you're a professional, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so. But you just do it, and it's kind of like with knocking doors. Like, dude, sometimes I psych myself out. I'm like, oh freak, man. It's like, oh, there's a lot of Mercedes-Benz in this neighborhood. There's gonna be a lot of jerks. But then you do it, and it's probably the best neighborhood I've ever knocked. You know, because it hasn't been knocked. So once you do something, it's never. What is it like? The problems in our head are like 90% in our mind, and really 10% it's not even there. But once you do something, it's all action.
Yeah.
Action takes away fear. And then of course you have to have knowledge, you know, so you can't just. But you get better and better. You know, it's like I'll probably win the race next.
You'll
That's my
probably
mind.
win.
I'm
Yeah.
probably in my mind. I'm thinking I'm going to win. Like literally. Like
I love it.
Backflip at the end.
The bias for action is what it is, right? I always think about this with the thing that I most didn't want to do that I had to make myself do when I was in college. Studying for finals to me was that. Like, I've actually been always pretty good at parking and getting out and knocking the door. But if I want to understand how someone that struggles with that feels, I have to think back to college. So I'm like, okay, so you've been in this class for 4 months. My parents were paying for school. I have a test that determines 50% of my grade. It's in an hour and a half, and I cannot get myself to open the. It's like sometimes these reps like, I know you have rent coming up due,
Yeah.
and you have a baby, and but you can't knock the door, and a lot of people don't understand that. But I would remember being like, my grade comes down to this, and hold on, let me watch this show. Hold on, let me make food. Hold on, let me make sure that it's cold. I got to go get my other jacket. But here's the thing. When I sat down and did it, I was like, it ain't that bad.
Not that bad.
It's not that big of a deal.
And
you know what I mean?
here's the thing is I've seen with my friends, because, you know, a lot of them made their money when they hit, you know, mid-30s, and now they're in their 50s and they're kind of lost it all, and they want to go hit the doors again. But, you know, they can't because they took that hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't take a hiatus, and you never lose it. Like, see, my back was against the wall when I started solar. If it wasn't, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now because I wouldn't need the money. But I just got in a routine, turned into a discipline, turned into an addiction. It's a good addiction to have, really.
Yeah.
Like, and it's fun. It provides for your family. My kids freaking love it. Dude, they love all this stuff.
That was true
Like
from the first podcast, from the Cuddle Puddle, podcasting from the puddle. Is all of the kids were all in Vivint Solar stuff back then,
Yeah.
wearing Vivint Solar headphones with Vivint Solar bags on.
Yeah, you
and,
have to get them to buy
They all
in.
piped in, like, we love the contest, and like swag boxes would show up. And
Dude, they all have my login. You know the store?
Yeah.
It's gone.
That's right.
My son bought it for all his roommates, dude, in Provo. Like that's cool.
Rocco walked out of my house yesterday in my status hoodie. He was leaving for his early class, and he walked out with his hood on and the status thing behind him, and I was like, hey, you didn't earn that, dude. Like, but yeah, that's a.
You gotta get them to buy
generational
in,
thing.
and they, like I said, they like to see, you know, their dad being successful.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need me wiping their nose or their butts or, you know, how can we do? Okay, I've literally told I've never seen a report card, and they've all gotten straight A's. I've never told them to go to bed, but they go to bed at 10 o'clock. I'm like, dude,
Good kids.
I'm like, what's going on? I don't get it. Like,
It's Ed, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's no parenting. Is what it is.
Well, there's parenting happening. I just don't know. Because
It's just may not be
if
you.
if I didn't tell my kids to go to bed, the world would feel it somehow.
Yeah, I've never
Back
had
to
to.
your house.
I've never
being on
had
fire,
to
that
like.
would happen.
I mean, grounding is not even a word in our house. I mean, but when I was a kid, I'd be grounded all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird. They're just like. So I think if like, you get your family to buy in, you know, but then you get them excited. I got, E-Trade accounts for them. I got Webull. They do crypto. One of my sons, his best friend, was a millionaire at 16 years
You
old.
told me about that. He had a business. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was driving a $200,000 car as a junior and senior, and so he's employed all my sons, and they just go out and they would fly my son, who was at the time 15. He would fly him in the morning to Miami. He'd go buy a bunch of shirts or shoes. He'd be home for dinner. That was their mindset. He took our Yukon with a learner's permit to New York City. You know how hard it is? We're like, but we don't say anything. They're grinding. You know what I mean? They're all grinders because they see their dad do it, you know. But so that's kind of good. Like people who have young kids, because I was really nervous, to be honest. I was really nervous because I was gone a lot. Like I probably missed 90% of their basketball games, you know, or they play rugby, which I can't. I'm glad I missed 90% on the rugby games. But now but they've never complained, you know. So it's good. So I know there's a lot of young fathers out there that are probably worried about it. Like, dude, just do good and they're going to follow you. But you have to live it. You know what I mean? Because you can't fake that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look into the psychology of, like, the father in this case, right? Their impact, like, on their children. There's a lot of connection to just studies that I've read, like female confidence. A lot of that will come from their dad, and a lot of our desire when our kids are really young is to be there with them. But there's pros and cons to that, right? Like, I always say that most frustration comes from trying to enjoy the perks before you've done the work. So if I'm at every, poo-poo session and every doctor's appointment when they're 3, it's gonna be really hard for me to be there when they're 17 because I'm gonna have to do the work then.
I barely made their birth, and that's not a joke.
I actually almost missed a couple of those too, but there was a lot of them. But what I'm saying is,
how are they going to know if I missed their birth? They'll never know.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I think it's something that everybody has to figure out for themselves, because I'm gone a lot too, and there is guilt associated with being gone. That's like a real thing.
Yeah.
However, one thing that is true in studies I've read and experts that I've talked to is them knowing that their father's a good man, that he's a productive contributor. Whether you're there every second or not, that matters. That does like weigh on them, right? It'd be one thing if you were never home, but you were also a bum, or you weren't getting work done. So like the fact is, like it's virtuous, it's admirable to produce and work and try to better yourself so that your family can have a better life. And somewhere in there, everyone has to find like their own balance. I'm not an expert on it, but I do know that there are a lot of studies that show that the biggest indicator of their relationship with you isn't necessarily time spent shoulder to shoulder. It's what kind of a person their dad is. Yeah,
and they can see sacrifice. They know it. I mean, there's times in Maui where I'll tent, I'll camp. You know what I mean, just to save money. You know, I got condos up there if they're booked. Like, dude, why get a hotel for $500? I'll just sleep in a tent. And I'm calling them on a FaceTime. Hey, look at my tent. They think it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know.
So no open closets.
Yeah, you're like, listen, I don't need I don't need a room, but if I can just use.
I've
this
slept in my
closet.
car. Like you said, I used to sleep in offices, man. Like in Boston, dude, I would like lock the door and pray the operations wouldn't open. I was like, oh, don't in here.
They come in like, are you living?
Because
here?
I've always traveled. You know what I mean? Like I've always commuted, so it's like that stuff adds up. You know, so it's like, but they see the sacrifice. You know, like my daughter. Last time I was camping, she's like, "Dad, I'm gonna Venmo you some money, man." Like,
because her Dogecoin was up.
Yeah.
But they see it, so they appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In any sacrifice, there's always the law of inverse. You're going to be that much better off, and maybe it's with parenting. You know, so I've been blessed that way. Like I was nervous, but it turned out good. Like no regrets.
You've given a lot and you've sacrificed a lot to be to have the perk and the options that you have. And there'll be another chapter of life
and it does take the right spouse. She's got to be on board, you know, because again, we're like two ships passing in the night. I mean, literally, like it's got to work. You got to be on the same page. So it's you know, it doesn't work without a whole family buying in. Everybody's got to buy in.
It's culture. Any team has culture, and the culture is either positive or negative, and sometimes it's intentional or not. Like it's either culture by design or by happenstance, right?
Yeah.
And I do feel like there are things that you're embedding into your family. I do feel like you guys have a way of doing things, just like teams, right? Like when I came and saw your family, I was like, wow, this works. This is a very close group. Now it's different than my family, but it's not negligence. It's
and it's all they've known, because
deliberate.
like every summer it's a different city, so and you make it fun, I wouldn't, my son's like, Dad, should I do this or not? And I'm like, I got a chance to be an internship at some accounting firm or going door to door. I'm like, do the intern. It's a crazy lifestyle, but it works. I mean, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah. It is crazy though,
It's
to
not for
be to
everybody.
the age now where I look at like my kids that are growing up, and I remember Brenchley used to always talk about he hoped Max worked at Vivint.
He
And-
wanted his son to work at Vivint.
Yeah, and now I look at it and I'm like, my kids, I don't know what else they will work here. I believe that, especially to like get through school and things like that. Like I believe they'll work here, and so a lot of that is motivation to make sure that the house is set up right, because I do want generations to enjoy it, and that's a crazy thought.
Here's the thing: is like when I was right out of high school, my dad got me a rock picking job. I mean, you cannot find a worse job than that. I'm not. That was the title, a rock picker. They were,
What does a rock picker do?
they were building a dam,
If
and
I
they
have
were
to go
bringing
out
in
on a limb and guess,
all this earth on this loader, and there's boulders. So you had a rebar, and you had to wear steel-toed boots in the summer with jeans on and an orange vest and a yellow what do you call that?
Construction hat,
Construction
yeah.
hat. And dude, I did that for 6 months, and I think really that's kind of made me like, dude, I do not want to do this for a living. Like I was hanging out. My best friends were like ex-cons, and they knew I was going on an LDS mission, and they're trying to like throw porn at me, and like, it's like they're trying to like,
At the job.
corrupt me a little bit, and they became my best friend. I literally invited them to my farewell. They didn't come, but doing that job for the 6 months, I was like, dude, I'm going to school. So sometimes where if you get an introvert guy and you get him knocking, it might light him up where it's like, okay, I got to go. I want to be a lawyer now. I want to do something. It's a wake-up call for some people, because it's not for everybody,
there's
but you can learn some life-changing skills, obviously.
There's if you ever watched anything that the Nitro Circus put out, so that's Travis Pastrana and like his group, and it's like there's his cousin Tommy. He's like a big guy. Call him Street Bike Tommy because he tried to jump his street bike into Travis's foam pit. And you should look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it. But he gives it too much pepper, and it like loads the back shock. And when he goes up the quarter pipe, it bucks and throws him into a front flip, and he clears the entire foam pit and like lands on his back like 100 feet. It is gnarly. So anyway, they're always like, so Tommy joined the crew, and they're always like hooking him up to a winch over a lake and a quarter pipe and like hucking him hundreds of feet in the air. And he has these tattoos on his forearm, and one of them says hospital and one of them says cemetery. So like when he's hurt, he can like give the arm. And one of the things that they're always doing is like, you guys always make me do this crazy stuff. And then you hear him in his head say, it's better than drywall. It's better than drywall, because he used to hang drywall. And so I always think about that kind of stuff where I'm like, hey, it's better than, in your head, it's going back to rock picking. In my head, for some reason, it's always being a manager at the Gap. I've never been a manager at the Gap. But for
Manager
some
at the
reason in my
Gap.
head, that's what
Listening
I
to
would do if
Nickelback.
it wasn't this. I'd be like, I'd be the best
I mean,
Gap
that's
manager ever,
ultimate
by the way.
torture for guys like us to be like in retail sales in a Gap.
But it's like better than drywall. It's like, for me, it's like, well, dude, I get to dress how I want. I get to work with who I want to work with. I get to be outside. I get to talk to people. I get to be in control of my income. And it starts to flow back to where it's like, oh, this is actually great.
we actually have it really good.
Yeah.
I mean, we create our own schedule. We're not really working. It's not more than 40 hours, really. You know what I mean? It's like you knock for 6 hours a day. That's not 40 hours a week. All the back end stuff is taken care of. We don't have to schedule our installs anymore. It's like, dude, you can have a nice life, man. You can start at 2 and be done at 7, and that's 5 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it takes that mindset, right?
It's a nice life.
a nice
Like,
life.
how many jobs can take a week off?
We need to get those tattoos for you. I feel like, and we need to give you a nickname. You're the Dos Equis guy.
the
most-
Dos Equis.
Or are you the
Sam,
rock
yeah.
picker, dude?
The rock picker, dude, I'm telling you, that changed my life, man. Ever since then, like, I don't know what happened, but
it's a good point because people work so hard.
I worked so hard, and I think that turned something in me, like a switch or something, because ever since then, like, I've just been nuts whenever I decided to do something. It's all because of the rock picking days, man. Yeah. That was no joke. It paid me $9. That was back in 91. So do the math with inflation. It was like $9, and overtime was $14.10. That I remember, and it was 60 hours a week. So I remember counting money, dude. I was like making $500 a week. It's like, dude, this is incredible. But it was really hard work. Yeah. But rewarding. So what's not anything hard is going to be rewarding. You know, everybody would do it, obviously. Yep. So challenging things are good for us, man. Makes us stronger. That's right. Yep. And this is probably the most challenging job is going door to door. I mean, it's probably got to have the highest turnover out of any job, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it all depends on how you ride it.
Yep.
All right, let's close out, Dave. You got a closing question from your list of questions. Dave got excited that Sanders was coming in today, and he's like, dude, I'm gonna break this guy's mind wide open.
Are we gonna do this once a week now?
Yeah, we should, dude. We'll do it over the phone though, so you don't have to come out of your neighborhood.
Dude, why don't we just get a hidden camera? I've always wanted to do that.
You don't have to hide them now. Everybody has them on their doorstep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You just collect that footage. Well, dude, hey, I appreciate you taking time and coming down and sharing. You were podcast number 1, and now you're
done, right? You're gonna shut it down.
We're gonna close the book on this. We've extracted all that we need to extract, but you've been really inspiring to both Dave and I and the entire sales force. So it's awesome to have you here and to see you out there working.
Well, I consider Sunrun, like, people think I'm a lone wolf, but I love everybody. Like all these get-togethers. I mean, just
you're always there.
The energy is unreal. Like there's just a lot of good guys. They're amazing. I mean, Jeremy Atkinson, Corey Whalen. I mean, those guys are taking the torch, man, and they are like killing it. They're doing numbers. I'm like, dude, slow down, man. Seriously, you're making me look bad. I'm like, I can't keep up with these guys. They're freaking good. Yeah. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
So they're getting better and better. And it's good to see.
Hey, one of my favorite things about you, we talk about how you show up to all these incentives. To me, like the eternal like optimist and like the joy that you put out, that's like immediately the first thing I think of when I think of Jon Sanders. The work ethic, all that, the guys on Mount Rushmore, obviously all that, but to me, like I feel like you value every interaction you have, and I think that's like really special.
Well, I remember the first time I met one of the Toon brothers, the one in Maryland.
Mark, yeah.
He hadn't met me before. He's like, dude, I thought you were going to be a complete prick. He's like, you're actually pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm a down-to-earth guy.
I love that you still enjoy we just had the Vegas weekend, man. And
oh my gosh,
I love
I
love that you still enjoy it all. Because that's one of the things that I look at. I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this. You know what I mean?
It is so much fun, yeah.
So many experiences.
It's only getting better, man.
Top experience from the career, what comes to your head?
Top experience?
Yeah, that you've like earned. Of all the places you've traveled, you've traveled the world.
It's funny,
like games, events.
When we went to Iceland, Iceland was so much fun.
I loved Iceland.
But I don't look at the numbers like I used to. But I knew I was going to be like in the top 10 reps, and you were presenting. And you showed like the first, I think 8, and I thought that was it. I'm like, oh my hell! I was like, dude, I didn't make the top 10. I was embarrassed. I was sitting next to my wife, and all of a sudden you showed the next 3, and I was like the number 1 rep. I didn't even know. I was so floored. I still think it was an error in numbering because I think Atkinson kicked my butt.
No, I don't know.
You should do the math again because there's no way. But that was probably the most proud because at 51, I'm still bringing it at 51.
Still got it, man.
Yeah. So I would say that was kind of nice.
That's great.
Cool. It was a nice surprise.
And we were like literally in the Nordic ice castle, having this massive event.
So fun, dude. And it didn't get dark because I got a lot of energy. I don't sleep very much, dude. It was like getting dark at like midnight.
I feel like when we got there, it was dark at 10:30, and when we left a week later, it was like didn't get dark. It was like dark. It was dusky at midnight, and then.
Can you imagine doing a door to door like in the summer there? You're like,
dude, that's what
Alaska.
That's what it is up in Canada or Alaska. Yeah,
like
that's
it's not dark. It's like.
It's not dark. It's just late.
But that was
coined that phrase. You know that, right?
What's that?
It's not late. It's just dark.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's very true. But these porch lights are so bright anyway. It's like, dude.
There's
people who don't.
See, that's what I was just gonna
People
say.
who don't knock at night, I love it because it's more deals for me. Like literally, that's how I think.
That's Jon Sanders.
That's the key.
I was like,
you got to end with that.
That's
people
the
who
key.
don't like knock before 2, it's like, okay, I'm gonna get the nice retired demographic, the nicest people that you can knock on. They want to skip it, and if they want to stop knocking at 6 o'clock, so be it. I'll take all the laydowns.
I feel like John would like break his pelvis and be in a wheelchair. He's like, this is the best. Everybody wants to talk to me because I'm in a wheelchair versus how am I going to go door to door? I can't even get up the driveway. You know?
No, I'm glad you guys had me. It's fun to.
That's amazing.
You got to title this one "Porch Lights Are Bright."
Porch lights are so bright
there you
nowadays.
go.
So bright.
With the porch lights they got nowadays. All right, fade it out, close it out. John, thank you. You're the
You
best.
bet. Appreciate it, guys.
If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram at Run the League.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.